This video has over 9 hours of content and contains 21 unique Python projects. These projects go in ascending order of difficulty. So the very first project in the video is pretty simple. It is just teaching you Python completely designed for beginners, and as you go through the projects they get harder and harder and harder and harder until you get into some pretty advanced stuff. We have games, we have using apps, we have scripting, we have automation, and we have fun tools, we have alarm clocks. Anything you can imagine is probably in this video, and there is definitely a project that you will enjoy and you can learn from in terms of navigating here. I hope you guys are going to enjoy this. It has taken me a fair amount of time to edit it, and I have chopped out all of the intro and the outros, so you just get right into the content of stuff, straight to the point, and right into practicing your Python skills. I hope you enjoy this video. Project 1, Quiz Game. So this quiz game, the idea behind it is we want to ask the users a bunch of questions, and then if they give us the right answer to these questions, we will kind of add 1 to their score. Then at the end of the program, we will print out what they got out of the number of questions. So if there was 10 questions, we would say, hey, you got, 3 out of 10 or 7 out of 10 or whatever. And maybe we will even give them a percentage or something like that. So let us get started. The first thing I am going to do here is use the print command or the print function. I am going to assume you guys are familiar with this, but when you want to print something to the screen output, something to the console, you say print. You put some value in here. The value you typically put is a string. A string is anything encapsulated in double quotation marks or a single quotation marks, and then this will be what is outputted. So the first thing I am going to do is just kind of welcome my users to the game. I am going to say welcome to my, and then computer quiz. So the specific quiz I will go with this is computer quiz. Please feel free to go with whatever type of quiz that you want. Alright, now we have welcomed the user to our game. Let us just quickly test this out in VS Code. To run your code, you press this little kind of run button right here. You are going to see it should open up a terminal down here, and then notice it says welcome to my computer quiz, because the program just write awesome. So now what I want to do is ask the user if they want to play my game. If they say no, I don't want to play, then we will just immediately quit the game. So to do that, I am going to create a variable. I am going to say play is equal to, and then I am going to use this function called input. Now what input allows you to do is ask the user to start typing something in the console. So inside of input, in here you put what is known as the prompt. Now the prompt is kind of what appears before the user can start typing. So for example, if you are asking the user for their name, you may have the prompt be name, and then colon, and then maybe a space, and then right here after this space the user could start typing whatever their name was. So in my case I would put Prakash, and then whatever they type after the prompt, and then when they press enter, that will be stored in playing. So if I type Prakash and then I press enter, now playing will be equal to Prakash, because after the prompt, that is what the user typed before they hit enter, right? Hopefully that kind of makes sense. And even if the user has a space, they say like Prakash, and then are all of this Prakash space R will be included in playing, because this is all the stuff they typed after the prompt before they press enter. So I am going to ask them here, do you want to play? Question mark. And then I am going to add a space here. The reason I am adding a space is because if I don't add a space, then the user is going to start typing right on the question mark, and that is going to be kind of all smushed together, and it doesn't look nice. And so we are going to add space to make sure the user starts typing one space after the question mark. Alright, so now if I run my program, so I press the run button. It says welcome to my computer quiz. Do you want to play? Notice the cursor is here, and now I can start typing whatever I want. When I press enter, nothing is happening because we haven't done that yet. We haven't configured that. But that is kind of the basics. That is how you get user input. And just you show you here, if I print out playing, that this will do is give me whatever the value of this variable is. So if I run this here, it says welcome to my computer quiz. Do you want to play? Say yes, and then it prints out yes, right? So pretty straightforward. Okay, so now that we know if the user wants to play or not, right? Because after this line is done, we will have something stored in playing. We want to check if the user typed yes, right? And especially if they did not type yes, we want to end the program. So what I am going to do is use something known as an if statement. Now an if statement allows us to conditionally check, kind of compare values together and see if something is true or false. And so I am just going to write out the kind of entire statement, and then I will run through it step by step. I am going to say if playing does not equal to, so an explanation point, and then the equal sign, and then I am going to say yes. Then what I want to do is I want to quit the program, and there is this function in Python that you can use called quit. This will just immediately terminate the program. So what I am doing is using if I am writing what is known as my condition. This is the thing that I want to check. So I want to check if the variable play, which is what the user typed in, is not equal to yes. The reason I am checking if it is not equal to yes is because if they typed anything other than the word yes, I want to quit the program. Whereas if they typed yes, I don't want to quit. And so what happens here is we are going to compare whatever the user typed in with yes. And since we are using not equal to, if what the user typed in is not equal to yes, this condition evaluates to a boolean which is known as true, and then if this is true, right? So if whatever the condition is true, then whatever is indented after this here is going to be run. So hopefully that makes sense. I won't go too much more into the syntax. I assume you guys can probably figure it out yourself. But the idea is you put a call in and then all the stuff you want to happen when this condition is true. You indent here, and an indent is kind of four spaces. I would recommend you use tabs rather than kind of going 1, 2, 3, 4. You will get some issues with your indentation if you try to do spaces and tabs together. So anyway, let us just see this now. Let us run this program. Okay, and I am going to say welcome to my computer quiz. Do you want to play? I am going to type yes. And well, the program is going to end regardless because we are not doing anything after this if statement. But if I go here and print OK exclamation point and then let us play smiley face. Oops. Okay. I need to fix my quotations here. Yeah. Okay. That is all good. Let us run this now. It says, welcome to my computer quiz. Do you want to play? I will type yes. And it says, okay. Let us play. Right? And then it gives a really bad smiling face that I need to fix. And if we run this one more time and then this time we type no, notice that it doesn't say okay, let us play because this condition was true and so the program quit. Alright, so that is about if statements. Hopefully that all makes sense. We are going to be using a lot of if statement in this video. So now that we say okay, let us play. What we want to do is ask the user their first question. And so what we are going to do is the exact same thing we did when we were asking the user if we want to play. We are going to say some variable. I am just going to call it answer because that seems to make sense is equal to and then input, and then I am going to put whatever the question is. I am going to set ask something about a computer. I will say what does CPU stand for question mark, and then what I am expecting is that the user is going to type in the answer, right? And so what I am going to do is just add a space here to make sure that again the user is not typing right beside the question mark. They have a little bit of space, and now what I want to do is check if the user's answer is equal to the correct answer. So I am going to say if statement is equal to, and then I need to type out what the actual answer is. Now in this case this is central processing unit, and I think I spelled processing correct. Obviously, you are going to want to make sure your answer are actually spelled correctly, because even if the user types in central processing unit but they like forgot the G, or they spell something wrong, or they have a like capital P, they are going to have the question marked as incorrect because the answer has to match exactly with what the user typed in OK. And now we are saying OK. Well, if the answer was equal to central processing unit, what do we want to do? I am going to print that they got it correct. So I will say correct like that. And notice I am using single quotes and double quotes kind of interchangeably. It does not matter which one you use so long as you are consistent with the starting and ending quote. Awesome. So let us just run this now and see if this works. So I am going to press run. Says welcome to my computer game. Do you want to play? Yes. Okay. Let us play. What does CPU stand for? Central Processing Unit. And then it gives me the output saying correct. Now if I run this again, do you want to play? Yes. Okay. Let us play. What does CPU stand for? I type in just CPU. It doesn't give me anything because, well, this has not true sweet. Okay, so now the thing is, though, if the user gets this wrong, I want to tell them that they got it incorrect, right? We need some output saying, hey, no, that was not correct. And so what we are going to use is now is what is known as the else statement. So whenever you have an if statement like this and you are checking if something is equal to something else, and that is what the two equal sign is doing, or you have some condition here. If this condition here does not evaluate to true, you can put this else statement here, which means if this is not true, whatever is in the else statement will run. So if I go here and I say print incorrect exclamation point, now if this is false, so if the answer does not equal central processing unit, then we will print out incorrect. If we are typing anything doesn't matter, just so long as this right here that we typed out is equal to false, whatever is the else here will end up run. And let me just show you what I mean, and then we can talk about this a bit more. So let us run. Do you want to play? Yes. Okay, let us play. What do CPU stand for? Central Processing Unit. And then it says correct. And us, I should have typed in the incorrect one, but that is fine. Let us just type in no and then notice it gives me incorrect. And if I ran this one more time, type yes, and I type some other random thing, it would still gives me incorrect. So if I type anything other than central processing unit, the else statement runs, and again the syntax for the else stat. If you write else and do a colon and then any stuff you want to run, you do indented after the else, and you can do multiple things as well. I could do another print statement and then both of these print statements would run if we got this question incorrect. Sweet. Okay. So now we have our first question, and now that we can do is kind of just copy this to do the rest of our questions, right? So I will copy this one more time. I will do 4 questions for my quiz. Please feel free to do more, and it is totally fine if we want to leave this answer variable the same. I don't need to change this to be something else. We could if we want to. But since we are done using the answer for this question after this if statement, it is fine. If we use the same variable to store the answer for our next question. So now what we are going to do is we are going to kind of remove all of our answers and questions, and we are going to type in well new answers and new questions, and I will show you some more things that we can do here. and kind of some fixes and all that as we go through. But let us just get our questions done first. Alright, so now my next question, I will say what does GCPU stand for? Question mark, and then this will be, and I will copy this graphics processing unit. Okay, so let us go graphics processing unit like that. I hope that is correct. And then the next question we can ask. I will just do a bunch of acronyms. What does RAM stand for? Question mark. This will be random access memory like that. Okay, and then lastly we can say what does PSU stand for? Question mark, and we will just say power supply like that. Sweet. So now we have got all of our different questions here, and we are kind of printing out whether we got them correct or incorrect. So let us just quickly test this out. Let us make sure this is all working. So do you want to play? Yes. What does CPU stands for? Central Processing Unit. What does GPU stands for? Notice I did not add the space here, and since I did not add the space, you are going to see what I start typing here that it is kind of smushed with the question mark. So I will say graphics processing unit. What is RAM stands for? Random access memory. Okay. And what does PSU stands for? Let us just type PSU. And then notice it tells me incorrect. So I am going to start by fixing the spaces here. You guys saw what happened when I did not add the space for the input. So now it should be all spaced out properly. Sweet. So now we have got this all working. Hopefully you guys are all familiar with this if and kind of else syntax. Now I just needs to be in this structure. Whenever you have a colon typically in Python, the next line after that does need to be indented. If I did this and like I did not indent this line here, you can see we are getting this red highlight, and it is reason we are getting that is because the indentation is all messed up. This is supposed to be indented after we have the else statement in a small. Note, you can only have the else statement after an if statement, right? So I cannot just randomly come down here and put an else statement. It needs to come after an if statement appears, right? So hopefully that is clear. Okay, so now the one thing that I want to show you though is that we might be getting some kind of bad results from our program that we don't expect. So I am going to run my program and I am going to say do you want to play, and I am just going to type yes with a capital Y, and notice when I do that it does not actually start my program, right? It immediately quits, and the reason for that is whenever you have a capital that is different than lowercase, right? So if you have yes, that is not equal to yes. These are different things, and so if we want to check if the person's answer regardless of the case, right? If they have a capital Y or a capital E or a capital S or something, or multiple capitals, if we want Y cap or capital Y, capital E, lowercase s to be valid, and to allow the user to play we need to do something. Now there is this method in Python called lower, and what lower does is it takes whatever text we type in and it just makes it completely lowercase. So if I go here and I print, Prakash is great like that, and then I say lower, and actually let me do this in another way that is not as confusing. Let me say text is equal to this, and then I say text dot lower. What this will do, and make sure you have the parenthesis by the way, is it will convert all of this text to lowercase. So if I just run my program here and we have a look at our terminal, notice that wait, I have to type something. Later just type that it says Prakash is great, all in lower cases. And so we can use this here to convert all of the answers that our user types into the lower cases. So I can say playing dot lower, and then if the user typed in something with capitals will just all be lowercase, and that way if they type yes with any different casing it will still evaluate to true because we are converting it to lower. Now in the same fashion there is something called upper. If you say upper it will convert everything into upper cases, and so then what you would do if you are using upper is you would make your answer is complete upper cases, because you are always going to be converting anything lowercase to uppercase. So hopefully that is clear. But we are going to just through do lower on here to all of our answers. I am going to say dot lower. I am going to say dot lower. I am going to say dot lower. Going to say dot lower. And alternatively, if you did not want to do it this way, you could actually just do it at the end of this input here. You could say input dot lower, and then you could just remove this because now your answer is already converted to do lower, so you don't need to convert it kind of in this condition right here. Okay, hopefully that is all clear. But yeah, that is just taking your answer, converting into lowercase, and then you are checking if the lowercase answer is equal to well the lowercase answer you actually have. All right, so let us rerun this. I am going to open up my terminal. I am going to run. Do you want to play? I am going to type yes with a capital Y. Notice this works now. And now I am going to do some capitals. So central processing unit, that works, right? GPU graphics processing unit, and then you get the idea. I won't do the rest of them. Okay, so the last thing I want to hear is implement some notion of score, right? We want to be able to tell how many questions our users got, correct? So what I am going to do is make a variable here at the top my program. I am going to say score is equal to 0. This is going to allow us to keep track of how many correct answers they have. Now all we have to do here, since we define score equal to 0, is every time the user gets a question correct, we just need to increment score. So add 1 to score. So inside of this if statement here, because this is if the user got it correct, right? I am going to say score plus equals 1. What that says is okay, take the value of score and add 1 to it. That is equivalent to saying score is equal to score plus 1. So hopefully that is clear. But that is a way that you can just add 1 to the variable, And so if we add 1 to score every time we get something correct, that means that at the end of our program we will have some number, right? We will have 2, 3, 0, whatever, however many questions we got, right? We can then use that to display how well the user did. So I am going to say score plus equal to 1. I am going to do this inside of all of these if statements here. Okay, and now we have added 1 to score. So now what I can do at the very end of the program, once we are done all of our questions, is I can say you got, and then I need to use a plus sign. This is a concatenation operator. I will discuss this in a second. Score plus and then questions correct exclamation point. But I need to convert this to a string. So let me go through what I just did here. Okay, so I said you thought I did a space. Notice I manually added the space here, and I then had a plus sign, and then I said string score and then plus questions, correct? So the reason I am doing this string here is because score is a number, right? Score is an integer, it is not a string. And so if try to do something like Prakash plus 1, well, this does not really make much sense, right? Because I am trying to add a number to a string, and like how do you add 1 to text? That is just an undefined operation that does not exist. So what I need to do instead is convert this 1 to a string, because now that I have two strings, when I add them together and I get in Python is Prakash 1, right? They kind of get combined, and so that is what I can do. I am going to convert this score here into a string. So then when I add it to the other string that I have here, it is valid. This operation works, and I am not getting some issue popping up. Okay, and then I am adding the questions, correct? So I am kind of putting this string score in the middle of the string, right? You got whatever the number is question, correct? Okay, so let us run this. And you want to play? Yes, I am going to say let us. CPU stand for central processing unit. Okay, graphics processing unit. Okay, PSU, RAM, and it says incorrect. You got two questions correct, right? Now it is giving me how many questions I got correct. And so the very last thing we can do here is we can copy this line and can give them kind of a percentage, right? Like you got 50%, you got whatever percent, and the way we do that is now we are not just going to take our score, we are going to divide it by the number of questions that we have is 4, and then we are going to multiply all of these by 100, right? And if we want to be extra clear here, what we can do is put parenthesis around the score over 4 to make sure this operation happens first before we multiply by 100. But you will see, if we did it the other way around, we did not add the parenthesis, it would still work fine, because we would do the division before we did the multiplication. But anyway, we are going to say now instead of you got questions correct, we are going to say you got, and then we are just going to add a percent on here. Now notice I am not doing a space, and since I am not doing a space, it is going to be whatever this number is, and then plus, and then the percent sign. so it will come right after, and then we can do a period. So now we have calculated the percent. Again, just taking the score, dividing it by our number of questions, which is 4, and then multiplying it by 100. Now, note here, if you change the number of questions, you got to change this number, right? So, let us go here and let us run this and let us go to our terminal. Yes, we will play. I will just type something random. Okay, random access memory, correct, and then power supply, and then it says you got 50%. You got two questions correct, and with that, that is going to wrap up our first Python mini project. So I know I went really slowly through this and really explained everything in depth. That is because this is the very first project. I am trying to make sure this video works for everyone regardless of your skill level, and now I will go a little bit faster. I won't re explain a lot of the syntax that I have already explained. Now, as we move into the new project, just anything new that I kind of come across that we use, I explain, but this is our first project. Project 2, Quiz Game. This is the quiz game. Now we are going to move on to do a number guesser. I think this is the one I was saying. I was going to do second. So this one is pretty straightforward. But what we are going to do is generate a random number, and we are going to track how many times it takes the user to guess this number. And so what I am going to do is zoom in a bit here so that we can see our code. The first thing I am going to do is import this module in Python called read. Alright, so the first thing to mention here is that this right here is what is known as a model. So when you import random, you are importing the random module. Now this just lets you use all of the functionality that is kind of in here. This is default. This is installed by with Python by default. You don't need to install it or anything like that in quick note. There is models that are built by people like me or other developers out there, and you can import them, but you have to install them first. This one is just built into Python by default, and so no installation is required. Anyways, let me show you how to make a random number. So there is a few different ways to do this, but the two simplest ways are to do random dot and then rand range. Then you are going to do an open and closing parenthesis, and let me get rid of the print statement so we can see this better for right now. And here you are going to put the start and then the stop of the range for your random number. So you do something like -1 if you wanted to start the range at -1, and then what this would do is generate a random number that goes from -1 to 10 but does not include 10. So that is very important. The number you put here is the absolute upper bound. You cannot have the number 10 be generated if 10 is here. If you wanted the range to generate a number between 1 and 10, you would have to put 11. Again, I don't know why they do that. There is just something in Python that are not necessarily intuitive for beginners. But with this is 11. It is not going to generate 11. It will generate up to 10. So make sure that is clear. Now there is another thing you can do here. If you want the range to just start at 0, you can say random.rand range and just put the stop. If you just put one thing here. What this will do is generate a random number between 0 and this number minus 1. So up to 10. And yeah, there you go. That is how that works. Okay, so let us do something from minus 5 to 11, and let us say r is equal to random dot rand range, and let us just print r. Okay, so let me run and we will look at our thing here. Okay, run and notice we get a 5. Now if I run this again, we are getting a minus 3. I run a bunch of times, we get a bunch of random numbers. You see, this is random and there you go. That is working. We got a 9. We can just run a bunch of times. We got a 10. Notice, we won't get 11 if we do this. Sweet. So we are going a random number. So that is one way. Another way to do this is with a function called rand int. Now rand int works the exact same way as rand range, except now it will include 11. So the upper bound range now includes the number that you type doesn't go up to, but not include it. So now if I do 5 to 11, 11 will possibly be generated. So if I run this now, we get 6, right? And if we keep running it, we might see that we get 11. Okay, I am not this could take a file. Yeah, there you go. So we do get 11. So that works. Okay, sweet. And same thing here, if you decide to not include the start, it will generate up to and including this end number that you put right here. So that is how you make a random number. So what we want to do is generate a random number. So actually let us leave this here. Let us say random underscore number, and then we want to ask the user to guess this number, and every single time they guess it, we are going to tell them if they were above or below the number, so that they can do it in like a reasonable number of guesses, especially if we make this number like really large, right? So the first thing I am going to actually ask the user is how large a number they want to generate. So we will assume it starts at 0, and then we will ask them to type in a number and we will generate up to that number. So I am going to say, let us say top of range is equal to, and then input, and we will say type a number, won't even tell what it is for. We will just say type a number. Okay, so now they are going to type a number. So what we actually need to do here is we need to make sure that this thing they typed in here is a number, because if the user types in like hello or Prakash or some random strings, something that is not a number, then we cannot use that, right? And we also need to make sure the number they type in is greater than 0. So I will show you how we do that. I am going to say if the top of the range dot is digit, okay, and then I am going to do an if statement inside of this. If when I am going to say if the int, and actually we are going to do this, we are going to say top of range is equal to int top of range. And let me pause here and explain what I am doing. So first of all, you can make a variable using underscore when you want to have multiple words. It makes a lot of sense to make the name with underscores. So like top underscores of underscore range, you cannot have a variable that is like top range. That won't work. You need to have it connected. You cannot have like two separate words like that. Anyways, this is equal to input. The user is going to type something in now by default. When the user types something in, it is going to return it to us with double quotation mark. So it is going to be a string. So even if the user types in like 25, it is going to return to as a like this. And this here for Python is not considered a number. It is not considered an integer. It is considered a string. And so we need to convert this 25 so that it looks like this, so that it is actually a number. And the way you do that is you use this function called int. So you surround the string with int, and then it will convert the string into its numeric representation. So it will give us 25. However, if you try to convert something that is not an equal However, if you try to convert something that is not an actual integer into an int, it is going to fail. You are going to get an error, and so we need to make sure that what the user typed in is a digit before we try to convert it into an int. And the way you check that is with this is digit method. So I say if top of range dot is digit, what it digit would do is return to us true if this is a number, otherwise it will return false. And so if this right here is true, we will convert top of range into an integer. So top of range is equal to int top of range. Then we will check if top of range is greater than 0. So we will say if top of range is actually, we are going to say less than 0, less than or equal to 0. Especially then what we will do is we will print out please type a number larger than 0 next time, and then we will just quit. So we will tell them what they did wrong, and then we are just going to quit the program right here. Otherwise, if we make it through all this, we are good. But one thing we need to do here is we need to put an else, and we need to put quit, and we need to put a print statement that says please type a number next time. So let me run through this. What we are doing is checking if it is a digit. If it is not a digit, so in the else statement we need to tell them, hey, you got to type in a digit. It doesn't work if you don't type in a number, right? And then we quit. Now if that works, if it is a digit, we convert into, and we make sure it is greater than 0. If it is not, then we tell them, hey, you got to type in a number, and then we quit. But if we make it through all of this and we don't quit, so we have now converted the number to an int. We can now use that number to generate our random number. So we can say random number, random dot rand int, and then we can put top of range of as our variable for generating that random number, and we will now generate up to whatever number they typed in. Sweet. So now that we have that, let us just print out the random number, and let us just test this and make sure it is all working. So I am going to run this type a number. Let us type 5, and we got one issue. Rand in missing one potential argument B. Okay, so this is my fault. I am saying when we use rand int, we could just include the top of the range, that is false. We need to include the bottom of the range as well. So I am going to put 0 there, and now this should work. So let us run this, and let us type a number. Let us type 5, and there you go. We generated a random number which was 4. If we run this again, type 5, we get 3. You can see this is indeed working. Sweet. So now that we have our random number, we want to keep asking the user to type in a guess for the number until they get it correct. And so I am going to use a while loop here, and I will explain how this works in a second. I am just going to say while true. Now what this means is, okay, we are going to do whatever is indented after this while loop here, after the colon, while this condition whatever is at the top of here is true. So right now, if we just decided to like print 10, this would happen infinitely. This loop would never stop unless we actually like manually close the program. The reason is because there is no way for this to end, right? I say while true, well, true is always true, and so we are just always going to print 10. However, there is this keyword, it is called break, and what break will do is immediately stop the loop as soon as this line of code is executed. So what we can do is use this break keyword to break out of the loop. Stop running the loop as soon as the user types in the correct number. So we are going to say while true, this is the condition for the while loop. We could do a real condition. We could say something like while like input, and actually we will say like user guess is not equal to random number. We could do something like that. That would work as well. But I want to show you using the break keyword. So instead we are going to do well, true. Alright. So what we are going to do is we are going to start by asking the user to guess what the number is, right? That is a very first thing we do every right time. We ask them, we say, okay, make a guess. So I am going to say user underscore guess is equal to, and then input. I am going to say make a guess coin. Now same thing here, we need to check if the user guess is actually an integer, right? And so I am going to copy exactly what we just did right here, and I am going to paste it down below, and I am going to say okay, if the, and now instead of saying top of range, I am going to say user guess dot is digit, then user not guess is equal to int of user guess, and then I will even take this, and we don't need to check if the number is less than 0. That is fine, we can just do this. So I am going to say, and I am going to get rid of this quit. Okay, let me explain this. What I am saying is, okay, the user guess is equal to input make a guess. They are going to type in some number. This comes in as a string. We need to make sure that what they have typed in is actually a number. If it is a number, we will convert it to a number. We are all good. However, if it is not a number, then we are going to say please type a number next time, and we are going to use this keyword called continue. Now that continue will do is automatically bring us back to the top of our for loop. Now what continue will do is automatically bring us back to the top of our loop. So it is a little bit different than break rather than ending the loop. It just brings us back to the very top. So if I did something down here like printed after continue, if we hit this continue keyword, these won't run, we won't print, we will just go back up to the top of the loop and ask the user to make another guess. And so that what we are going to do, however, we are going to come down here. Now we are going to say if the user guess is equal to the random number we are going to print, and we are going to say you got it correct. Otherwise we will say yes, print, you got it wrong. So if they did not get it right, they got it wrong, obviously right. Whereas if they did not type a number, we will just say please type a number next time, and then we will continue, rather than doing this and telling them they got it wrong after they did not even type a number in. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. We can test this out though and make sure it is working. To save the program and run now, type a number. Let us type a number. Let us say 10. Okay, make a guess. We are going to guess 3, and oh, okay, we actually got it. That is great. But notice that it is still asking us to keep making guesses. And to quit this, you can type Ctrl C on your keyboard if you get into an infinite loop. The reason it is telling us to do that is because we did not break out of the while loop, right? We said you got it, but we did not stop. And to stop, we need to use the break keyword. So now you will see if we do guess it, we will immediately stop looping. Whereas if we don't get it, we will continue looping because the break keyword is not here. So let us run this. Now type a number. Let us just go up to 5. Make a guess 1. You got it wrong. Okay, we will guess 2. You got it wrong. 3. You got it wrong. 4. You got it wrong. 5. You got it sweet. And then we exit the loop. There you go. Okay, so that is working fine. Now what I am going to do is I am going to keep track of how many times the user actually makes a guess. So to do this, I am going to make a variable similar to what we had with score before. I am going to say guesses is equal to 0, and now every single time we start this while loop, again I am going to increment add 1 to guesses. So I am going to say guesses plus equal to 1. So at the very top of the loop, we will increment guesses. So the first time this runs, guesses will be is equal to 1. We will go through all of this. Then we will come back up to the top. Guesses will now be equal to 2. The usual will now make another guess. And now when we exit this while loop, once this is done, we are going to print out how many guesses they got. I am going to show you a different way to do this. This time I am going to say you got it in, and then we will say comma guesses and then the string guesses. So another way to print multiple things on the same line is to use commas. So I am going to say you got it in, and then I am going to say whatever the number of guesses is. Notice I don't need a space here. Whenever you have commas separating your different things that you are printing out, it will automatically add spaces in between them. And then notice here I did not even convert this to a string, and that is because the print statement is smart enough to say okay, hey, this is an int. I am going to convert this into a string for you and kind of automatically add it to this string. So what we were doing manually before, the print statement can just do for us, and so this time we will let the print statement do it. This line here is completely equivalent to just having the plus, the space, the string, the other plus, and the space, right? It is the exact same thing. Okay, so let us go back to what we had, and there you go. we are all good. Now let us just run this, and I am going to show you how we can tell them if they got it greater than or less than, because I did tell you that we were going to do that. Okay, so let us run this, and let us say type a number. Let us go 5. Make a guess 1. You got it wrong. 2. You got it. And then it says you got it in 2 guesses. Sweet. All is working. So now the last thing we want to do is tell the user if they were greater than or less than the number, so that they can kind of narrow down their guesses. And so rather than just telling them you got it wrong, now inside of the else statement we are going to check if the user was above or if they were below. And there is a ton of different ways to do this. I am just going to do it this way. I am going to say if the user guess is greater than the random number, then what I want to do is say print you were above the number exclamation point. Otherwise, I am going to say print and I will say you will below the number. Alright. So let us run through this. We are just checking if the user guess is greater than whatever the random number is. If it is, we are going to tell them they were above the number. Otherwise, if it was not greater than, it must be less than, and we are going to say you are below the number. Now, some of you may have heard that statement. If it was not greater than, it must be less than. You say no, I could be equal to, that is correct. But the thing is, up to here we checked if it was equal to, and so if it was equal to, we would have gone into here. We could not have hit this else statement. So if we are in this else statement, we know we must not be equal to the random number, and so instead what we can do is just run this if statement that is inside of the else. I am going to show you a more elegant way to do this in 1 second, but let us just run the program and see if this works now. Okay, let us run this. Type a number. Let us type 20. Make a guess. Let us guess 10. You were above the number. Okay, so now I don't have to guess below 10. So I am going to guess 5. You were above the number. Okay, it is less than 5. 4, 3, 2, 1. You got it in 9 guesses. Okay, so anyways, that did work, but it was telling us whether we were above or below. Let us see if I can guess something that is actually I guess I couldn't have guessed anything below 1. So let us run this again. Let us type 10. Let us guess 1. And then this time it is telling us we are below the number. Okay, great. So that is working. Okay. So the one thing I want to show you here is how we can clean this up a little bit using something new that we haven't seen yet, which is known as an else statement. So an else statement is something that kind of happens after the initial if statement check. If I am just going to type this out and then I will show you how this works. So I am going to say elif. Okay. So now what I have done is I have made this code a little bit cleaner, and the way I have done this is I have removed that kind of nested if statement that we had, and I have now implemented an elif state instead. So what the elif does is if the initial condition is not true, it will then check another condition. So it says okay, if this is true, we are going to do this. We are going to skip all of this. If this is not true, we are going to check this. If this is true, we are going to do this and we are going to skip whatever else is after. However, if this is not true, then we are going to do whatever is in the else. So we are going to check this. If it is true, we do this. Otherwise, we check this. If it is true, we do this. And otherwise, if both of these things are false, we do what is in the else. And so that is just another way to do this rather than having what we have before, which was the else. And then all of this kind of indented in the else, right? This just cleans it up. And small note, you can have as many elif statement as you want. So I could add another one like this if I want to do that. But in our case, it doesn't really make any sense to do that. Okay, so that is actually it. I am not going to run the program. Just believe me, this does work. And yeah, that is going to be our number guessing game. So I will zoom out a bit so you guys can kind to see all of the code, but that is how that works. I guess there is not really much more to say about that, and now we will move on to the next one. Project 3, Rock, Paper, Scissors. Alright, so now we are moving to the rock, paper, scissors. Now obviously you guys know how this game works. What I am going to do here is make it so that the computer keeps track of how many times the user gets it correct versus how many times the computer gets it correct. When I say corrector, I mean whoever wins rock, paper, scissors. So the first thing we are going to do here is import random. Now small note here, when you are importing modules, it is typically best practice to do it at the very top of the program. I see some beginners import the module like right before they use it. That is fine, you can do that, but it is just a better practice to have it right at the top. So it is really easy to see what stuff you have imported and obviously remove it, and then you can use it throughout the entire file. Whereas if I try to use like random up here, I it doesn't work until after I have imported, right? So hopefully that is clear. But anyways, that is what we are going to do. So what we need is we need two variables, one for the user score and one for the computer score. So I am going to say user underscore wins is equal to 0, and I will say computer underscore wins is equal to 0 as well. Alright, now I am going to have a while loop. I am going to say while true, and the first thing I am going to say while true, and the first thing I am going to do here is I am just going to ask the user actually. Yeah, I will ask the user to input rock, paper or scissors, and then I will also let them type in Q like the letter Q, and if they do Q, then we will just immediately quit the program. So let us handle that first. Let us say user underscore input is equal to input, and I will say type, and then we can say rock slash paper slash scissors is scissors with two s's. I think that is how you spell it. Okay, rock, paper, scissors, and well. Paper should be spelled correctly. Okay, rock, paper, scissors, users or Q to quit. Okay, alright. So now that we have that, we will go down and we will check. Let me just zoom out so we can see this here what the user actually typed in. So the first thing I want to do is I want to see if they typed in Q. So I will actually convert this to lower in kind of the way that I showed you could do it previously. We will take whatever the user types in and we will just convert it to lower, and actually instead of a period let me do a colon and let me add a space, so it is not all smushed there. Okay, so type rock, paper, scissors or Q to quit, and I am going to say if the user input and this is converted to lower, right, is equal to Q, then what I am going to do is I am going to quit. Otherwise, I am going to check if they typed in rock, paper, scissors, or if they typed something else. And now I am going to show you how we can check if the user input is equal to more than one thing. Because previously I have been showing you how we can check if it is equal to just a string, right? But now I will give you a little bit of a, I don't want to call it a hack, but a little bit of a trick, so that you can see if the user typed in rock, paper or scissors all in one line rather than writing three in if statements. So I am going to say if the user input is in, and I am going to use a list. You guys probably haven't seen this before if you are like a complete beginner in Python, and let me just kind of fix this a little bit. So I am going to type it myself and I will explain what is going on here. Okay, so let us make this in course. Okay, and then this needs to be a course too. Okay, I am really messing this up quite badly, but get the idea. Okay, so what I have done is I have just created a list. Now a list is anything encapsulated in these square brackets, that is like separated by commas. So I have this rock, paper and scissors string in this list, and so what I am saying is if user input is in this list, I am checking if whatever the user typed in exists in either of these three strings. So essentially we are just checking if the user typed in rock, paper or scissor. Now you can put any strings in here that you want, but we are just checking obviously if this is in here, and that is how we can check multiple things to one line. There is other ways to do this too, but this is kind of one nice trick that we can use. So I am going to say if user input, and I am actually going to say is not in now. This is another keyword again that you may not have seen before. What this is going to do is simply reverse the kind of thing that we were checking before. So we were checking if the user input was in rock, paper, scissors. So now when I say not in, I mean obviously as you would read in English, this is checking if the user input is not in here. If it is not in here, that means I did not type in something valid and well. What we need to do is have them type in something valid. So what I am going to do is say type continue here, and what this will do is just re-ask them to type in rock, paper, scissors or Q. So we could give some error message saying that is not a valid option or something like that. But what I am going to do is just have it. So it keeps asking them to type something again until eventually they give us something valid. So when I hit continue, that means anything after here is not going to happen, right? If this continues is hit, we are just going to go back up to the top of the while loop. Sweet. And actually, rather than saying quit here, what I am going to do is say break. So this will break out of the while loop, and then that will actually automatically end the program for us, because we will be at the end. We won't need to what do you call actually manually quit. So the break breaks out of the while loop, which means we will go to wherever the end loop is done or wherever the while loop is done, and then we can actually just print something saying good, no, not that, goodbye, exclamation point, sweet. Okay, so now at this point in time, the user has given us valid input. They have typed in rock, paper, or scissors. So, what we need to do is generate a random number that represents rock, paper, or scissors for the computer. So, I am going to say yeah, random underscore number is equal to, and then this is going to be a random dot rand int, and we will generate a number between 0 and 2. So if they type in 0, that can be rock. If they type in 1, that can be paper. They type in 2, that can be scissors. So let us write that down in a comment. To do a comment in Python, you hit the pound sign or use the pound sign like the number sign, and then type anything after it. Anything on a line that comes after a pound sign will not be read by your Python interpreter, and it is just there so that as a programmer it is easier to read and give you documentation or comments about what is going on. So I am going to say rock is 0. I am going to say paper is 1, and say scissors is then 2. Sweet. So the way that I am going to do this is, now I could do an if statement, right? I could write 3 if statements. Say if random numbers is equal to 0, then the computer picked rock. If random numbers is equal to 1, if random number is equal to 2, actually don't need to do that. What I can do is H. Let us see here. Okay, so what I am going to do now here to actually assign some variable equal to rock, paper, scissors to represent the computer's kind of choice is, I am going to use a list. Now again, this might be a little bit confusing, but I think you guys will get the idea if I do this. I am going to take this list right here, rock, paper, scissors. I am actually going to store it in a variable. I am going to say options is equal to rock, paper, scissors, and I am going to change this here to be options. So this is doing the exact same thing as before, except we are just storing this list of values now in this option variable. Now if you haven't seen list before, these are actually very interesting. They are known as a data structure, and they are collections of elements, right? We have multiple elements, multiple strings stored in this list, and the way we access these different elements in this list, let us say I just wanted scissors, or I just wanted paper, I just wanted rock, is we use what is known as an index. So if you write the name of your list, which in this case is options, that is the variable storing the list, you can put these square brackets, and then you can put a numeric index that represents these different elements. So in this case, the different indices of this list are 0, 1 and 2. And if we had another element, right, let us just go test, then this would be index 3. So the way this works is you start counting at 0 and then you just go up by 1 every single time. So the very first element is indexed by 0, second 1, third 2, fourth 3, and so that is all. That is so when I say options at 0, that is going to give me rock. When I say option at 1, that gives me paper. When I say options at 2, that gives me scissors. And so I have some random number that is between 0 and 2, right? And 0 represents rock, 1 represents paper, and 2 represents scissors. Let me get rid of test. So what I can do is say, let us actually change this here. Say computer underscore guess or computer underscore pick I guess is equal to, and then this is going to be options at whatever the random number is, because this will be between 0 and 2, and so we will use that as the index is to actually access the string. The thing that the computer choose, right, rock, paper or scissors. So now what we can do is we can print out what the computer choose. You can say computer pick, and then we can say comma, and we can say computer pick, and then we will decide who actually own, right? So then we will say who own, and let me just do comma. Actually let us do plus, and let us just add a period. The reason I am not doing a comma and then the period is because if I do a comma, it will automatically add a space between this period and the computer pick, which I don't want. And so instead we are just going to add the dot like that. Okay, so we are going to say the computer pick that, and then we need to decide who own, right? And to do decide who own, we need to all compare the user's pick to the computer's pick. So we are going to say if the user input is equal to, and then I guess we will say rock. We then do kind of the winning condition for the user. So if the user picked rock, then what do they win against? Well, they win against scissors, and so now we need to check if the user picked rock and the computer picked scissors. So what I am going to do is use this keyword called and say computer pick is equal to, and then scissors. So if that is the case, we will point out one exclamation point, and then we will say user underscore wins plus equal to 1, so that they get one more win. And what this and does is it checks if the condition on the left side and the condition on the right side are true. So what happens in this case? If statement, or what is in this if statement, will only happen if both of these things are true. Pretty straightforward. That is how it works. Alternatively, there is an or, and an or will kind of do the opposite. We will check if either the left or the right is true, or both of them are true. If any of these three things happen, this is true, or both of them are true, then what is in the statement will run, whereas with the end it has to be both of these being equal to true. Or what in the if statement is going to run, or if what is in the if name is going to run. Sorry, butchering my English here. Okay, so that is one of the win conditions for our user. And then if that is the case, we can just go ahead and say continue, and we can go back up to the top of the while loop and keep going, but we need to check the other win conditions. right? And there are two more win conditions. Let us go here and let us fix the indentation. Okay, and we will say if the user input is equal to paper and the computer picked what is it rock, then that means that we own, right? And so we would add one of the win, and then the last one is we picked scissors and the computer picked paper. Sweet. So the reason I am doing this continue here is because after we have determined that we have own, that is really no point in checking these other if statements. So we could instead do this in ellipse. So I could say if ellipse, and then actually I could remove all these continues. And in fact, let us do this, and then we will go down here and we will say else, and then what we would do here is say print you lost, and then we will say computer wins. Okay, plus is equal to 1. So the reason this works now is because we check if we own with the rock versus scissors. To check if we own with paper versus rock, we check if we own the scissors versus paper, and if none of these are true, that means we did not win, right? There is no point in checking if the computer beat us in all of the other scenarios. We just need to check if our three win conditions were true. If they are not true, then we know that we lost, and so we would print we lost, and then we add one computer wins. And this is an example of using multiple ellipse statements. We will check this one if it is false. We will check this one if it is false. We will check this one if it is false. We run this. If any of these are true, we immediately stop and we do whatever is inside of here, which is increment. The user wins and print you want. Great. So the last thing I am going to say before I do goodbye is I am just going to print out the number of user wins versus computer wins. So I am going to say the user, or I will say in this case u1 comma user wins times, and then we will print the computer 1 and then computer wins times period. Great. So hopefully that is all. Good. Let us quickly run through what we have done, because we wrote a lot of code here relatively quickly, as you can tell. I am kind of picking up the pace a little bit as we go through this. So we have our user wins, our computer wins. We are importing random, which we already discussed. We have our list first time. We have seen this called options has our three values in it. We have while loop true. We have user input equals input, and then we say type rock paper scissors or q to quit. We make whatever they type in lowercase. We check if the user inputted q. If they do, we break. We are done. We stop the program if they didn't. Then we check if the user input is not in the options. If it is not in the options, that means they did not type a valid rock, paper, or scissors, and so we press or we go continue, which means we are going to start the loop again. We are going to ask them to type something in. Then what we do, if they type in something valid, is we generate a random number between 0 and 2. This is the like what it stands for. Rock is 0, paper is 1, scissors is 2. We make our computer pick. So computer pick is equal to options at whatever the index is of the random number. We then say, okay, the computer picked this. We then check if the user own based on what the computer picked, right? And yeah, that is all. Good. And then we increment computer wins or user wins, and we will keep going until eventually the user hits Q. Once we are done, we will break out of the while loop and we will print these three things. Let us run it. Let us see if it works. Okay, type rock, paper, scissors or Q to quit. Let us just test Q. Okay, you own 0 times. The computer owns 0 times. Goodbye. Nice verse. Okay, let us actually type something. Let us go rock. It says computer pick scissors. You own. Nice. Okay, type rock, paper, scissors or Q to quit. Let us go paper. Computer pick scissors. You lost. Okay, that sucks. Let us go scissors. Computer pick paper. You own. Nice. Let us go rock. Okay, and let us go Q. And then it says computer own 1 time. You own 3 times. Goodbye. Alright. So that is rock, paper, scissors, keeping track of how many times with the user and the computer wins. Project 4. Choose your own adventure game. Now we are going to move on to the next project, which is the choose your own adventure game. Alright, so this next project is one of my all time favorite beginners projects, and that is because it is so customizable. There is so much you can do with this. I am really only going to talk about this for about 5 to 10 minutes because this is up to you guys to make this kind of as big as you want. So this is a choose your own adventure game, and I guess best things to relate this to if you haven't heard of this before is kind of these children books, and actually they have books that are not children versions too, but there are kind of like pick your own story books where you will go to a page, right? And it will say like if you want to go left, turn to page like 42. If you want to like swim across the river, go to page 97, whatever. And then like it kind of brings you on all of these different paths throughout the book based on decisions that you make. So same thing here, we are going to ask the user to make a bunch of different choices. We will start with something simple like do you want to play the game, right? And then if they say yes, we will say okay, you come to some bridge. Do you want to cross it or do you want to swim underneath it? And then based on what they say, if they cross the bridge, maybe we will say okay, you come to a dead end. Do you want to turn around or do you want to search the jungle? Whatever, like you can be as creative as you want. I am just coming up with stuff at the top of my head. But then, if they had instead decided to swim under the bridge, maybe we say, like, oh, there was a crocodile and your journey ended, whatever. So, you guys can make it as complex as you want, but I will show you like the basic structure and kind of the nesting of statements and how it works. So the first thing we are going to do is I am actually going to ask the user for their name. This is one. This is something I don't usually do, but I think this will be cool. So I am going to say, name is equal to input, and I am going to say type your name, cool, and then I am going to say print, and I am going to welcome the user. I am going to say welcome, comma, name, comma, to this adventure, exclamation point, and then we will actually get right into it. And before I even ask them if they want to play, what I will do is I will just say like. I will ask them for a choice. I will say, you come to a dirt road or something. Do you want to go left or right? Whatever. So the first thing I am going to say here is answer in lower cases is equal to input. And I will say, you are on a dirt road. It has come to an end and you can go left or right. And then I will say, which way would you like to go? Question mark. Okay, so let us just go here and notice that it is doing this auto formatting. You guys don't have to worry about this. Just my ID auto formats my code when I save it, and so you can see it is kind of going on a new line. Oh, don't worry about it. You can just do yours in the same thing. But anyways, that is like my prompt. You are on a dirt road. It has come to an end and you can go left or right. Which way would you like to do? And I am expecting them to type in left or right. So the first thing I am going to do is I am going to check if they type left or right. I am going to say if answer is equal to left, and actually before I do that I am going to convert this input here to do lower, and I realize I kind of messed something up. Hopefully that fix it. Okay, so we are going to say do lower, and let me add the space here between the question mark. Okay, so answer is equal to left. So if the answer is equal to left, then we will do something else. Otherwise, we will say if answer is equal to right, and then else we will say print, and then else we will say print not a valid option. You lose. So I am just going to make it so. If they ever give us something that is not valid, they just immediately lose the game. Okay, so if the answer is equal to left, then we need to pick what is going to happen when they go to the left. If the answer is equal to right, we need to decide what is going to happen if they go to the right. So I will start by kind of doing the left path, and let me just put a print statement here so I don't get an error. You will notice that if you don't have something indented after it is expecting something to be indented, it will like yell at you and be angry. So you can just put an empty statement like print, and that will kind of fix it. Okay, so now what I am going to do is I am going to ask them another question. I am going to say answer, and you can name these variables whatever you want. Maybe it would make more sense to name them like Q2 or something whatever. I will say answer is equal to input, and I will say okay, like you come to a river and you can walk around it or swim across, and I will say type walk to walk around, and swim to swim across. And make sure that when you guys do this, you are kind of like, telling the user what they need to type in, because sometimes it is not intuitive on what they should be typing. And so I always try to give them the option, like tell them explicitly like what I am expecting them to type. So they don't give me an invalid option like not intentionally. So now I am going to check inside of here if the answer is equal to swim, if the answer is equal to walk, and then else I will print not a valid option. you lose, right? So we will do that. Okay, so now I need two things to happen here. So print and print OK. So I am going to pause for a second. Hopefully you are getting the idea of what is going on here. Right? If they go left, I ask them a different question. And then I check inside of this if statement what the answer for that. Next question, and then I do something else. Whereas if they go right, I am going to ask them a different question. And so it is cool because there is like all of these different paths that people can explore. And like if they only go left at the beginning, they are only exploring like half of the potential paths, and then as soon as they go right, there is all new different options. Now you could have the same option for different things. They type right. If they decide to go left or right, you could in theory ask them the same question if they go left or if they go right. But I like to do it differently. I think that is more fun. So let us just kind of continue on this path. Here I will say if the answer is equal to swim, then I will print you swam across and were eaten by the alligator. Is that how you spell alligator? Maybe you guys can tell my spelling is not the best. Okay, eaten, eaten. There you go by an alligator. Nice. Now, if they decide to walk across, I will say you walk for minimize, ran out of water, and you lost the game. Okay, so both of these options here were invalid. So, if they decide to go left, doesn't matter what they choose, they were just going to lose, and so instead they have to go right, and so we have kind of ended the path now on the left. But if we wanted to, we maybe swim was like the correct answer. Quote unquote, we could add another path here, and we don't have to have them lose on one of these options. I could add another path for walk too, right? Like hopefully you are getting the idea. You can just change these kind of if statements in as far as you want. So now let us do something for going right. And actually before we do that, let us test this out, and let us make sure you guys understand what is going on here. Okay, so type your name. I am going to say Prakash. Says, welcome Prakash to this adventure. You are on a dirt road. It has come to an end and you can go left or right. Which way would you like to go? Let us go left. When I go left, it says you come to a river. You can walk around it or swim across. Type walk to walk around, and swim to swim across. You are going to type swim. It says you swam across, were eaten by an alligator. And then there you go, boom, you lose, right? Okay, so now let us go and do something for right. So for right, I am going to say answer is equal to input, and I am going to say you come to a bridge. It looks wobbly. Do you want to cross it or head back? Question mark. And then the options I will put here. I am just going to put them in brackets. I will say cross slash back to kind of really indicate, hey, that is the two things that you are supposed to be typing, cross or back. And then here I am going to just copy this if else structure just so I can fill it in. I am going to say if the answer is equal to back, if the answer is equal to cross, and then I will continue. So now I am going to say if answer equals back, you go back to the I don't know, like main road, whatever. We can make this whatever you want. Now you can decide to drive forward. I don't know, drive to the left or go to the right, or you know what we can make going back just be the wrong option. We will just say you go back and lose. I don't think you guys need me to give too much detail here because I am having trouble coming up with this. Okay, so we are going to say that crossing is the correct option. So if they decide to cross, then what we are going to do here is now we are going to ask them another question. We are going to say answer is equal to input. We are going to say you cross the bridge and meet a stranger. Do you talk to them? And we will say yes, comma, no question mark. Okay, and then same thing here we can say if answer is equal to yes, elif, answer is equal to ops is equal to no, and then I will say not a valid option, you lose. So let me copy that. Okay, not a valid option, you lose. And then here again we can decide what we want. So we will say print maybe yes is like the correct answer and it ends the game. We can say you talk to the stranger and they give you gold whatever you win. Exclamation point. Otherwise, no. We could say print. You ignore the stranger. If I can spell stranger correctly and they are offended and you lose. Okay. So again I am just like randomly coming up with this stuff. I am sure you guys are laughing at the options that I am going to it here, but I am just trying to show you the structure of this program and kind of how like the nesting works that you can make this as add-ons as you want. So now we have kind of implemented something for the right. So it asks you a question. Obviously, you lose if you go back. If you go to decide to cross, then you ask another question. You cross the bridge, meet a stranger. Do you talk to them? If the answer is yes, you lost. Or you win if the answer is no. You lose if you answer something that is not one of those. Then what do you call it? You lose. And then, of course, if you want to keep going from here rather than telling them they lose or they win, you just ask them another question. And you keep doing this and keep nesting this if and else, and you can make multiple options to you. Don't have to just do two options, you can make it so that could give you three options. You can make it so that you store one of their options in a variable like name, right? And then you use that variable later on, like maybe they picked up a I don't know, like a weapon for something really early, and if the weapon they choose really early is not correct, when they go down a certain path, then maybe they lose. Whereas if it was correct, then maybe they can continue on or something like that. And so, lastly, I am going to say print thank you for trying, comma, and then this is going to be their name. Okay, so let us run this and I will just go through a few of the paths, but that is pretty much going to wrap up this game. There is not only much more to show you, this just equal cool one, and I always find this fun, and obviously you guys can come up with better stories than I can. So type your name and say Prakash. Welcome Prakash to this adventure. You are on a dirt road. It is come to an end. You can go left or right. I am going to go right. Okay, you come to a bridge. I looks wobbly. Do you want to cross or head back? I am going to cross you. Cross the bridge and meet a stranger. Do you talk to them? No. It says you ignore the stranger and they are offended and you lose. Thank you for trying, Prakash. Right? There you go. And we could try this again. Type your name, Prakash. You are on dirt road. Let us go left. Right. You come to river. Let us walk. And it says you walk for minimize, ran underwater, and you lost the game. I am going to go through all of the options. I think you guys get the idea. Now that is the choose your own adventure game. But this is kind of the template. Use the if, elif and else structure, and make this an advanced and complex as you want. Project 5, Password Manager. Now let us move on to the last project, which is the password manager. Alright, so now we are moving on to the last project, which is a password manager. Now the point of this program is to kind of organize and store your passwords. So we are going to store all of the passwords along with the username or the account they are associated with in a text file. But we are not going to store the passwords in plain text. We are going to encrypt the passwords. Now, even though we are encrypting these passwords, which means they are going to need a kind of password to be able to decrypt them. So, like there is like a master password for all of the passwords. This is not a secure way of storing your passwords. Do not rely on this for anything other than like a fun Python project. And I personally would not recommend storing at least any of your very sensitive passwords. In this method, it is just like a cool thing, and I wanted to show you how to do it. And it is kind of a more advanced project out of the 5 that we have done. So the first thing I am going to do here is I am going to write the code that is allowing us to actually ask the user whether they want to list out their passwords or whether they want to add a new one. And we are going to store all of these in a text file. So I will do this project first without encrypting any of the passwords, and then we will go and encrypt them. So the first thing that we need to do is ask the user for like a master password. So we are going to say pwd is equal to input, and we will say what is the master password question mark. Now we are not actually going to validate this password is equal to something. We are going to use this password to encrypt our passwords. So if they type in the wrong password here, it is still going to work, like the program will operate, but it won't show them the correct password. And you will see how that means when we kind of get later into the video. Regardless, what I am going to do now is ask them what mode they want to go in. So whether they want to add a new password or whether they want to view their passwords. So I am going to say mode is equal to input, and we will say would you like to add a new password or view existing ones question mark, and then the two inputs I will allow will be I guess, view and add. Okay, so that is what I am expecting them to type in. Now what I am going to say is if mode is equal to view, we will do something. Otherwise elif mode is equal to what I say add. We will do something else. Otherwise else. We will say print in valid mode, and I am going to take all of this and I am going to put this inside of a while loop. So I am going to say while true because we will allow them to like add a password, then view them and like so on and so forth. And so in this else here I will just say invalid mode and I will say continue, and what this will do will bring them to the top of the while loop. And then I am also going to add something here that says press Q to quit, and then I am going to convert all of this to lower, and then I am going to check at the very top here. I am going to say if mode is equal to Q, then break the while loop. Okay, sweet. And then we could make this an elif, but we don't have to make it an else since we have a break here. If this is true, it just won't even bother checking this. So up to you. But I am not going to add the elif. Okay, so now that we have this, and I am going to do is show you something called a function. So I am going to create two functions. Here I am going to say define view, and I am going to say pass, and then I am going to say define, and this is going to be add. Okay, so what a function is an executable, reusable block of code. So the way you call a function is you write the name of it, which is this. Okay, and then two parentheses. So the basic syntax is you write def to define a new function, space, name of the function, open and closing parenthesis, and then any parameters that you want inside of. Here I am not going to really talk about what that is because I am not trying to teach functions. Here I am just trying to show you how we can kind of split our code into different sections. And anyways, the way you call a function is by its name and then the open and closing parentheses. So if I put say like print Prakash inside of here, then I could call this function a bunch of times, and every single time I call this function, it would do whatever is inside of here, which would print Prakash. So if I had, print twice, every single time I call the function, it is going to print out Prakash two times. Whatever indented inside of here just happens when you call the function. Pretty straightforward. But the point of me creating these two functions is that rather than writing all of the code related to the view mode and the add mode in the while loop, I am going to put them in this function. So it is a little bit more organized and easier for me to kind of separate my program. So I am just going to have pass inside of here right now. Now pass is a keyword that literally does nothing. It is just there to make it so you don't get any like indentation error, because you need to have something indented after the colon. And so for now we are just going to write pass, and you can see we have done that here too. So now instead of just using pass, I am going to call the view function, I am going to call the add function. So now depending on what mode you selected it is going to call these two functions, which will then perform the operations for that mode. It is just a cleaner way to write the code. It makes it a little bit more organized. Okay, so let us start with the add function. What I want to do is create a new file if the file storing or password doesn't already exist. and add the password into it. So the first thing I need to do is get the user account or whatever the username and then the password, and then I want to add it into the file. So I am going to say I guess name is equal to input, and we will say account name like that, and then we will say pwd, which stands for password is equal to, and actually sorry, this should just say password because we already have pwd up here. And in fact, let us call this master pwd, and then we can call this pwd. So pwd is equal to input, and we will say password colon like that. So now they are inputting their account name and their password. Now what I want to do is open a file or create a file if it doesn't already exist, and add this password in. So I will explain what this is doing in a second. But I am going to say with open the name of my file, which in this case is going to be password.txt. We are going to just use a text file for now. Then we are going to say comma, and then we need to define the mode to open this file with. Now the mode we are going to use is a, which stands for append. We are going to say as F, and now I will explain what I just did. So when you use this with right here, this allows you to then do something indented after it. And the point of this with when you are opening a file especially is that as soon as you are done doing all of the operations with the file, since we edit this with it, it will automatically close the file for us. So you can open a file like this. You can say file equals open, and there you go. Now you have file. But the thing is, if you do this, you need to make sure you manually close the file after you open it, because if you don't do that, your Python process will still be kind of like holding on to and using this file, and it is going to cause problems if you try to open this file somewhere else. And so it is just better and safer to kind of use this with keyword, because now you don't have to manually close, it will automatically close the file for you. So anyways, I am going to say with open password.txt in a mode. Now so this is the name of the file. The next thing is the mode to open the file is. Now there is a bunch of different modes. The main ones are W, R, and now W means write, and this will do is create a new file or overwrite this file if it already exists. Very important you understand this. If password.txt already exists and you open in W mode, it will clear that file and make an entirely new one. So only use W mode if you want to always override a file that potentially already exists. Okay, then there is R mode. This is just simply read mode. You cannot write anything into the file. If you open it in read mode, all you can do is just read the file. That is our mode. And obviously this is not going to destroy a file if it already exists. In fact, there will be a problem if you try to open the file and it doesn't exist in R mode. Then you have a mode. This is a append mode. This is probably the most flexible mode. What this allows you to do is add something to the end of an existing file and create a new file if that file does not exist. So if password.txt does not exist, a new file will be created called password.txt, and then we can write to the file if password.txt already exists. We are able to write to the file and read the file from the very end, and we can just read the entire file when we open it in a mode. And so for adding something, we are going to open in a mode, because if it exists we append to the end, if it doesn't we create it. Awesome. So now what we are going to do is say f.write, that is the name of our file, because we said as f, and then we are going to write in the name plus the pipe plus pwd. So what this is going to do is take the name, it is going to separate the password with the pipe operator, and then it is going to put the password, and then we will have user and password inside of the file. So let us actually try this out. Let me run this. You can see it says what is the master password. I just type whatever. For now just type hello. And would you like to add a new password or view existing ones? View, comma, add, press Q to quit. Okay, I am going to type add, and it says account name. Let us just go Prakash password. Let us go is over. Great. Okay, so now I am just going to quit. Notice this password.txt file has been created. If I open it, I now have Prakash and great. And if I were to do this again, it would add the next line in. So actually let me rerun this. Let me say add account name. Your password is Billy, and then notice it gets added in here. The thing is, though it got added on the same line, and I don't want this to be added in the same line, and so what I am going to do is I am going to quit here, and I am going to make it so that I go to the next line after I add each password. And the way I do that is I add what is known as a line break. I think this is actually called a carriage return, maybe a line break at the end of the line. So every single time I add a line, I track on this little invisible character backslash. This won't actually appear on the line. We won't see this on the line, but we will add that on. And what that tells the text editor to do is to go to the next line. So now the next time we write something in, it will be on the next line. So if I look at this and we run this, now add Prakash and 5432, and now if you look here, I goes to the next line. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. But there you go. I am just going to delete everything in that file. I am going to quit this, and now we are able to add passwords and usernames into the file. What I am going to do now is make it so that we can view all of the passwords. So to view all of the passwords, I need to again open this file. So I am going to copy this. I am going to say with open, and then this is going to be password.txt as if. I am going to change this from a to br, because I don't want to potentially create a new file or anything like that. I just want to read the existing file, and then what I am going to do is I am going to look through the lines of the file and just print them out. So I am going to say for line in F, I am going to say do read, and actually read lines is what I want to do. Now what read lines is going to do is just exactly what it says. It is going to take the file Sorry, this should be F. It is going to read all of the lines for it. And then what I can do is use a for loop to get all of the lines of the file. So let us just look at this. I am going to say print line and let us just see what happens. Now if we go to view mode and then I will kind of walk through this more. So let us run master password doesn't matter. Let us say view and then oh, there is nothing in the file. So it did not show us anything. Okay, so let us go add account name. Let us go Prakash password test and now let us say view and then notice it shows us Prakash and test, but it is printing a new line after it shows us this account name and this password. And so I am going to show you how we can kind of fix this now. So the thing is, remember how I told you we are adding this kind of invisible backslash. The carry return. Now when we read the file, we actually read in that carry return. And so we need to strip this carriage return from our line. And the way we do that is we use this thing called R strip. Now that R strip will do is it will strip off the carriage return from our line. So that is all you have to know, just our strip. That is what it will do. There is also something called strip and strip will strip off the carriage return as well. But R strip is like more specially exactly for this. So what I am going to do now is run the file or run the program, master password doesn't matter. I am going to say view and now notice that it is not printing that new line after we print this line because we stripped off the character check. Great. So now the thing is, though I am printing Prakash pipe test, I kind of want to figure out or separate the username from the password. So how are we going to do that? Well, I am going to say that my data is equal to line dot r strip and then I am actually going to split this data. So I am going to say my user and pass is equal to, and sorry, this should be pass w is equal to data do sit at, and this is going to be a pipe operator. So this might seem really confusing because only this is a beginner project. I know a lot of you guys haven't seen this syntax before. What split will do is it will take a string, it will look for this character right here and it will split the string into a bunch of different items every single time one of these characters is found. So if you had like hello pipe, Prakash pipe, yes, pipe 2, whatever, what would happen is this data do sit would actually return to you the following. It would return to you a list that says hello Prakash, yes, and 2. So it remove all of these pipe characters and it would give you all of the unique string that are between these pipe characters in a list format. And so to access the different elements you would use index 0, 1, 2, 3, so on and so forth. Now the thing is, we know we are only ever going to have one pipe operator, right? Unless the password or the username contains a pipe operator, we are just going to assume that it doesn't contain a pipe operator just to make our life a little bit easier. If it did contain a pipe operator, there would be some more steps we have to do. I am not going to do them for right now. Anyways, we know we are only going to have one pipe operator, which means the list that is going to be returned to us will only have two elements in it. In fact, it will always have two elements in it. So what that means is that we can actually just grab both of these two elements by saying user comma pass w. So when you do something like user comma pass w, this assigns the first element in the last to user and the second element in the last to pass w. And since we know our list always has two elements, that means we can do this right. Whereas if we had three elements, we would then have to add another variable, right? And then x would be assigned to x. Hopefully that makes sense. But that is why we can do what we are doing, and that is kind of what the split operator does. So now what I am going to do is I am going to print out user called comma user and then password colon comma password or pass w, right? So now it will look a little bit nicer. So let us go ahead and try this. I am going to quit this program. I am going to return it. It is going to say what is the master password. Say test. I am going to view. So now when I view, it says user Prakash password test, and I think I should do like a separator between the user and the password. And so what I am going to do is just add a comma like that. Okay, so now if we run this, let us quit. Let us rerun master password test. Would you like to add a new password? I am going to say view and says user Prakash comma password test, and there you go. And we could actually even split this up with a pipe operator. I think that will look cleaner. I am not going to run it now, but we will do with the pipe. Sweet. So now we are able to add passwords and we are able to view them. But the problem is I can just look at this file and I can see what the password is, and well, that is not very good. We don't really want to do that, so we need to encrypt these passwords. Alright, so how do we encrypt a password? Well, this is where it gets a little bit more difficult. That is why I have kind of waited until this point to do the encryptions. So you guys could at least follow along with this part. See how to write to files, read from files, all of the kind of the stuff here. So the way that you encrypt a password, we could write a manual encryption algorithm. But I am not going to do that. That is a bit beyond the scope of this tutorial is. We use a module by someone way smarter than all of us who knows how to do encryption. And the way that we use this module is we need to install it. So remember at the beginning of the video I was telling you when we imported random that hey there is also another module that are built by random people that we can use. But the thing is we have to install them because they are not by default installed with Python. So this is where a lot of you are probably going to have problems if you haven't done this before. But open up your terminal or your command prompt depending on your operating system. Doesn't matter what one, and just type pip install and then type cryptography. If I can spell it like that, pip install cryptography, just press enter and pray that this works for you. Now if this doesn't work for you, don't worry, I am going to show you how to fix this. But for some of you that should have worked. If that works for you, you are good. You can kind of skip probably the next minute of this video because I am just going to explain how to fix this if this does not work for you. Try the following command. OK, pip3 install cryptography. Press enter. See if that works. If that doesn't work for you, try python-m pip install cryptography. If that doesn't work for you, try python 3-m pip install cryptography. If none of these works for you, this means that pip is not installed on your system. Pip is actually a recursive acronym that stands for pip installs packages. And well, what it does is it installs packages for you, and by default when you install Python it is not included in the installation. I don't know why they don't just include it by default. You have to check a little box to say to install it. So you could just reinstall Python and check that box that says fix pip, or you can follow the two videos that I have that are linked in the description, one for Mac, one for Windows, showing you how to fix this command. Now they are not directly called like how to fix pip. They show you how to install a module called PAM. But when it comes to installing the PAM thing, just instead of doing PAM do cryptography. Okay, so you need to install this cryptography module. Once you have that installed, we are good to go. If you know the Python interpreter is and you have multiple on your system, this is going to be a bit more complicated. You need to make sure you are using the right Python interpreter when you are running your code, the one that you install cryptography into. Okay, so at this point in time, I am going to assume you have successfully installed cryptography. Once you have done that, what you need to do is import it. So you are going to say from and then cryptography like that dot, and you are going to type this thing called fernit. Yeah, fernit like that, and then you are going to import fernit. Now I am looking at a check sheet I have, because this is not something I do very often, so I don't have this memorized. But this is a model that is going to allow you to encrypt text essentially. Now the first thing that we need to do when we use this is we need to define what is known as a key. So essentially that this is going to do for you, and I am not going to talk about it too much. It is going to take a string of text and using a key turn it into a completely kind of random string of text that you cannot get back the original text from without knowing the key. Now this key is something that we are going to combine with our master password. So imagine you have this key, okay, and then we have our password. So the key plus this password is what we are going to use to encrypt our text. Now that means that if you type in the wrong password, when you go to decrypt the text, what is going to happen is you are going to get something that makes no sense. It is not going to be the original text, because you need to key plus the password to be able to get back to the original text. So it is kind of key plus password plus text to encrypt, and then that equals like random text. Okay, and then you have random text plus key plus password equals and then text to encrypt. Now this is obviously like a vast simplification of what is going on here, but that is kind of what we are going to do with this model. So the master password in combination with the key that we are going to store will be able to encrypt and decrypt our text. If you type in the wrong master password, you will have a wrong decrypted text. Okay, so what we need to do is write two functions. One function that can create a key for us, and one function that can store a key. So I am, or sorry, retrieve a key, or so I am going to say define write underscore key. I am just copying this from my sheet over here that I have on my other monitor. I am going to say key is equal to format dot and then generate underscore key. I am then going to say with open, and I am going to say key dot key. This is a key file, and then WB. This stands for write byte mode as key in your file, and then I am going to say key file dot write key. Okay, so what this is doing is going to open a file. It is going to create this file called key.key in WB mode, which means write in bytes. You don't really have to know what that means. It is just a special file format, and then you press as key file and, or sorry, as key file and then key file dot write, and you are going to write in this key that was generated by this thing called fate. Okay, that is what we are using up here, that we have imported. So you are going to write, or sorry, you are going to run this function one time, and when you run this function one time, it is going to create this key file for you. So let me show you when I just call write key here. After I input the master password, it will then create this. So let us run this and just type some random thing, and then notice here we get this key file. Okay, and inside of here you have this key. Boom. Good. Now remove the call the write key. You can keep this function in if you want, but you don't need it anymore because you already have the key. And so what I am going to do is I am going to comment it out. So to do a multiple line comment in Python, you use three quotation marks, single or double. You make sure that they are same on both sides. You do 3 at the start of the comment, 3 at the end. And so now I have commented out this function to make sure I don't use it again, because if I use it again, it is going to be a problem. Okay, now that we have done that, we need a function to load this key. So in a similar way, actually I am just going to copy this. I am going to change this now to be load key like that, and actually probably should not have copied that. I am just going to say return open, and then this is going to be key and then dot read, and the mode is going to be RB mode. Now the thing is I need to take this here, I need to say file is equal to open. I am just going to say file dot read. I am going to store this in key, and then I am going to say file dot close. Just to remind you that you got to close your file every time you open it. Okay, so I am opening the file in write, or sorry, read byte mode. So it is reading bytes. I am then going to read the file. I am then closing the file, and then I am returning the key. Again, you don't really have to understand exactly how this is working. This is just part of the decryption stuff. Okay, so now we have the key. So now that we have the key, that we are going to do at the top of our program, here is we are going to load it. We are going to say key is equal to load key. which means this function needs to go above where I am calling. So this is another interesting thing. Let me copy this right key as well and put up here whenever you want to use a function. It needs to be defined before you use it. So I could have this function defined below this line. If I did that, that would mean that it would not be able to use this function because it was not yet created when I tried to use it. So I got to create it first, then I can use it obviously. Okay, so now that we have that, what I am going to say is f is equal to fornet. I am going to pass key. Now this is just initializing this kind of encryption model. So you are writing fornet, you are going to pass it the key. Okay, so actually I am realizing I made a mistake here. I just got to take this stuff and I got to put is below the master password. So I am going to say master password, then key equals load key, for equals fetch key, but then I am going to change my key to be key is equal to load key plus the master password 2 bytes. Now you probably don't know what this means. Bytes is kind of a different way of storing information. You have probably heard of bits and bytes before, not the snacks, but like in terms of computing, right? You have bit and then you have bytes, and well, regardless we have our key in bytes, and so we need to convert our master password into bytes so that this works, that we can add this together. Now just like when you add two strings together, that is exactly what is happening here. We are taking the key which is in this file and we are just adding this master password in its bytes format to this key and then using that as the actual key. Okay, hopefully that is clear. That is like a lot of the hard stuff. Now encrypting stuff is really easy. So what I am going to do is, now when I go ahead and write my password, I am going to first convert this password into its encrypted version. So I am going to say for dot and then encrypt, and I am just going to surround my password with that. But first I need to encode my password. Now the reason I need to encode this is because encoding my password will convert this into bytes, and actually I am realizing here that this is going to be better. I am going to say master password dot encode rather than bytes again. All encode does is it takes your string, turns it into bytes, and so same thing here. I am taking my password, I am turning it into bytes with dot encode, and then I am encrypting it, and I am going to store that beside the name. And I also realize that now I need to convert this to a string, so I am going to say string for dot encrypt pwd dot encode, and this will now encrypt and encode your password. Okay, so now when we store these passwords, they should be stored in an encrypted format. So now the thing is, we need to decrypt them when we show them. So to do that is going to be literally the exact same thing we just had here. So I am going to copy this, except instead of encrypt it is going to be decrypt. Okay, so we are going to say decrypt like that, and then instead of pwd this is going to be pass w. Okay, so I am hoping this is going to work. I have a feeling it is not. I think made a small mistake here, but we will. We will worry about that when we get to it. Okay. So now we should hopefully be storing encrypted information and reading non-encrypted information. So let me go in password and let me delete this because this is non-encrypted, and so that going to give us a problem right now. And let us go here and let me rerun this app. Okay, okay. What is the master password? We now need to pick the master password that we want to use to encrypt our data. So I am just going to make mine. Prakash, make yours whatever you want. Would you like to add a new password? Yes. Want to add account name? We are going to say maybe just like Facebook password. We will say Prakash is great. Okay. Would you like to add new password or view an existing one? I am going to say view, and then we get a problem. It says invalid token. Okay, so let me have a look here and see what is wrong. But if we go to password.txt, you can see that we are storing this in the file, and now I have actually already determined what is wrong. But let me just collect my thoughts and I will write back. So I will realize the problem here, and it is that we are writing in this B. What is it? I guess this is a quotation mark and then another quotation mark here, and we cannot be doing that. So I am actually going to clear this file. So the thing here in Python, and this is, I guess I can teach you about bytes. Now when you write a B and then you have something after this, like I say B and then hello, this is a byte string. This is different than the string hello. When you have this little b before this means byte. So the thing is we were writing in this little b, and we don't want to do that, because when we do that, that means when we try to decrypt this, it is all wrong, because we have this b and this quotation mark, and well, just incorrect. We cannot be writing that into the file. And so what I did before is, you saw I had a string surrounding this in our add file. We cannot have that. Instead of having a string, we need to decode this. So I forgot that we have this thing called decode. It is the opposite of encode. It is going to take a byte string and decode it to a regular string. So now if I decode this, all should be good. And same thing here, I had a what do you call it string like that, and that is no good. I could not do that. Instead I just have to have for.decrypt and then pass w.encode. So I am going to take the string in, because I am writing in a string. That is not bytes, it is just a string. And then what I am going to do is convert that string into bytes and then decode that b string, and then that should work. So now let us see if this works. I am going to return the program. I apologize about that mistake. I am going to say what is master password. We are going to go. Prakash, would you like to add? I am going to say add account name. Let us just go jo password 1 2 3 4 5 6 7. Okay, now I am going to say view. When I say view, it gives me user job password B, and then 1 2 3 4 5 6 7. So it is showing me that bytes thing. If I want to remove this bytes thing, I need to decode this. So I am going to decode like that. And now if I quit here and I rerun and I type in the master password, which is Prakash, and I press view or type view, none type. Object has no attribute decode. Okay, what is the problem here? I am printing out this. Oh, sorry guys, I added the decode at the end of the print statement, not at the end of this if thing. So I had it like after this bracket. I needs to be after this second closing bracket. So let me rerun this. Let me type in Prakash. Let me type in view. And now notice it gives me the correct password. 1 2 3 4 5 6 7. However, if I go to password.txt, you cannot see the correct password, right? It is storing like this a random string of gibberish that really like means absolutely nothing. And so if I actually quit this, let me just clear the screen and rerun. Let us go to password manager. Let us go to run, and I type in the incorrect password. I will just type Prakash 2 and I type you. Notice it still gives me the correct password. Okay, it is interesting that that is giving me the correct password. It should not be giving me the correct password. So let me look at this for a second. Okay, so I am going to apologize here because I have made a mistake. I thought that we are going to be able to use a master password in combination with our key and just do some kind of like hackish manipulation to get this to work. Unfortunately, it looks like doing that is way more complicated than I thought. I just was looking on the internet, right? Now, in fact, I will bring up the documentation that I found. So, we are using this thing called Fernet, right? And there is a way to use password with Fernet. But I mean, you guys can kind of read this here. It is a little bit complicated, and I don't really want to put you guys through all of this because this is just a beginner project. So I am just going to remove this master password feature. Obviously, that is pretty important, like you would want to have a master password. So I really do apologize about that. But if you do this now and you just use the key as you used it before, everything will still work. So right now, if you run the program and and I will show you, and we don't have a master pass says, would you like to add a password to you? I type you, it gives me the correct passwords, right? Even though we add technically a different key that had the addition of our master password to kind of encrypt them previously, this still works. So, anyways, that is where I am going to leave it.